Good morning. Morning from home. It's sunny. Coffee's good. What a nice change. Hmm. It's actually I shouldn't say that. It was really sunny when we were in Ireland. Sunny to the extent where people are like, it's not normally like this. Like, thank you for bringing the sun, which is kind of cool. We've actually had really good weather when we've been in the UK/Ireland the last few times. So actually London wasn't too bad. So we're in London and Oxford 2.5 weeks ago. But we were in the UK about 18 months ago and we were visiting Scott and doing a bunch of other things as well. And it was September and it was like 31 degrees Celsius, which was just like, wow, this is really cool. Anyway, where are we? 8:40 in the morning. So I got home 7.5 hours ago, and I'm going to leave home in about 21 hours to go to Perth and do an event there. I'll talk more about that in a moment. Um, it seemed like a good idea at the time. And I was actually, in fairness, it still seems like a good idea. It's fine. I've had some rest. I'll be rubbish by this afternoon, but that is the joy of the travel. Let's jump into it. Let's jump into the formalities now. Since I was here in this room last, I of course got fished, which was not fun for about half an hour, and after which I was kind of like, okay, well, we will make good of this experience. So we'll get some great education stuff out. I'm going to talk much more about that in the weeks and months to come as well. And also, we'll get to highlight a new sponsor, Malware Bytes. That was a nice pivot. Big thank you to Malware Bytes for sponsoring my blog. Again, this is now the third week in a row since my incident. Since I entered credentials into a site that I really should have realized that I shouldn't have entered credentials into. But that's why we need a combination of the human controls, which in this case failed me, and the technical controls, which brings us to Malwarebytes Browser Guard, the block phishing ads, scams, and trackers for safer. It's true, I can't argue that. Safer and faster browsing. Now, of course, Malwarebytes does all the ad blockery stuff, as well as identifying what sites are going to be phishing sites and possibly snare your credentials, which apparently is really bad when that happens. But what I've often said with various security controls, we have a lot of security controls where you put a security control in place and by design, it makes your life harder. Multi-factor authentication, perfect example. Every single time you have to use MFA, it makes your life harder. There's a good reason for it, but now there's another step in the way. And what I do like about tools like Browser Guard is for things like the speed of browsing. So yes, it makes you safer because it stops people like me from entering credentials into phishing sites, but it also makes the experience faster. Now, if you've never used ad blocking software and you've browsed the web and then you turn it on and you're like, oh my God, how come everything just got supercharged? So it's one of those rare occasions where things actually get better as a result of adding security in every way, not just in the security way, but in the usability and the speed way. And again, look, a big thanks to Malwarebytes. They came on at a time when I was very vulnerable, which was the right time to be talking about this. And like I said, we're going to get a lot of mileage out of that incident, not just from sponsors like this, but also in terms of, I guess, just like having a reference point of here is how easy it is for you to end up getting phished. Here is why it's really important to have multiple layers of control, obviously blocking the nasty stuff like Malwarebytes does. Also having things that sometimes do get in your way, like non-phishable second factor authentication, Passkeys, great example. I had a meeting, it was last week. It was in Ireland. So since we last spoke on this podcast channel, whatever it is we do, had a meeting with 1Password, and we're going to be doing a lot to try and get better visibility in Have I Been Pwned about which sites support 2FA at all, which sites support 2FA with passkeys. I mentioned, I think in this video just after I got phished, or actually I mentioned it in the blog post, I want to build whyknowpasskeys.com. And whyknowpasskeys.com is going to be the, I guess, like the MFA passkey successor to whyknowhttps.com. So that's still there. Why no https.com? And that I stood up in conjunction with Scott Helm many, many years ago when a whole bunch of websites just weren't supporting HTTPS by default. And we, country by country, broke it down by the largest websites that were not supporting HTTPS by default, by which we mean they weren't doing automatic redirects from HTTP request to HTTPS request. And that was great because when we saw it country by country, we'd have like the folks from the UK, for example, look at the UK list and go, I feel ashamed that some of our big brands are on here. Let's get these organizations to level up and move on to their HTTPS things. I want to do the same thing with Passkeys. A few little nuances there in terms of how do you know whether they actually support Passkeys or not. One of the big discussions I've been having during my travels, including in Ireland last week, which I'll talk about in a moment, is just even being able to identify which site supports it. Because we don't have like a standardized spec that everyone uses, like a .well-known, where everyone publishes the different multi-factor authentication mechanisms that they use, and we just look at that and then we know for sure. We don't have a single authoritative directory, although arguably, if you haven't seen this before, passkeys.directory, which is what 1Password runs, does have a very good list. So maybe we'll use that. What I like about their list is they've also got vote for Passkeys support. So this is like, here are the places that are not supporting Passkeys at the moment, but we would like them to. So for example, the number one service on their list that doesn't support Passkeys and has got nearly 23,000 votes to add it is Steam. You know, like the gaming platform or the gaming delivery platform. I don't know what we call Steam now. Steam, Netflix, Disney Plus, like all these things should be supporting Passkeys. Anyway, so where were we? We were in Ireland. Now I got a really nice, I'll put a photo of this somewhere, really nice little NCSC, Irish NCSC challenge coin. Challenge coins are a big thing. It's a little bit hard to see it here, but somewhere back there on my shelf, I've got a whole little display case of challenge coins from law enforcement agencies. And when we travel around, it's very common for law enforcement agencies to share these with the partners they work with. And we are building one for Have I Been Pwned as well. We are going to have a Have I Been Pwned challenge coin. This one's got a cool little NCSC on the front. What's it say here? I suspect Security Centre. Ah, yes. What does it say? National Cyber Security Centre. Of course it does. As well as the Irish flag there and the Irish harp, which is the big symbol, that camera focus, the big symbol of Ireland there on the back. So that's really cool. That will go straight to the pool room, as we say here in Australia, and it will sit in that little cabinet over there. Thomas here. Good morning, Troy, from Country, New South Wales. Where are you in Country, New South Wales, Thomas? I wonder if I've been there. I feel like I've been to a lot of Country, New South Wales at one time or another. Gundagai was one of the most, was actually one of the nicest country places I went to. Anyway, it's a big place. So that was Ireland. Griffith. Yep, been there. That was Ireland. Now we wrapped up in Ireland. We've flown home. It was actually like the not worst trip back from Europe, where I think we figured we were 28 hours door to door, which is pretty good. I think our worst trip was the middle of last year when we went from Athens, but we had to go Athens to Oslo to Dubai to Brisbane, and we ended up being like 34 hours door to door, which was just hellish. So yeah, we're back here, which is good. Tomorrow we go to Perth, and then on Monday I will be speaking at the Microsoft Student something. What's the correct word for it? Microsoft Student Accelerator Meetup, 14th of April in Perth. That's this coming Monday. 5:30 to 6:30 p.m., 6:30 to 7 o'clock pizza. I'm going to need more than an hour. I'll definitely talk for more than that. So anyway, that'll be good. So when did I last do a talk in Perth? 18 months ago, maybe? Now, for those of you not quite familiar with the distances that we deal with here in Australia, Thomas knows because he's in Griffith, that's a long way from everything. Perth is the other side of the country, which is a little bit like if you're in the US, it's a little bit like going from New York to LA. Or if you're in Europe, it's probably like going, it's probably actually further. It's it's like northern Norway down to southern Spain or something like that. It was a little bit frustrating because we're flying back yesterday from Dubai. After Perth, we're going to Exmouth. And Exmouth is a very remote location, but we're going there to go snorkeling with whale sharks because it just seems like a really cool idea. So we're taking the kids and we'll have a little bit of downtime after the Perth event. Now, we were flying back yesterday from Dubai. You know, I got the little map on the plane, and we literally flew over Exmouth, and we still had about 4.5 hours to go. So we flew over that, and now we got to go back there, and that's just the way our schedule worked out. So a long way from everything, but we will be there in the Microsoft Accelerator there, Student Accelerator, in Perth on Monday. So we're looking forward to that. Perth is a very relaxed city. If you're from other parts of the world and you've never seen these maps, if you found like a map of Australia where it shows you, like, it colours in where like 90% of the population live, and basically the entire map has no colour except for these tiny, tiny little dots, mostly around the east coast and Perth. So it's a long, long way from everything, but it's cool. And they've got quokkas. We're going to go see the quokkas. Never seen them before. Now, on to something new. I've been thinking about this for a little while, and I only first put it on social, I think when I was at the airport in Dublin about to fly home. Partner placement in Have I Been Pwned. Now, let me tell you what I'm thinking about here. In fact, I'll share a link here in the chat. If we go to preview.haveibeenpwned.com/pages/breach, I'll drop this in. This is our static sample breach page. And our thinking is that at the moment in Have I Been Pwned, you do a search on the front page, it comes back and you've been in 3 or 4 data breaches. There's a very big block of text in there for each one being the description. It's quite info heavy. When we send out breach notifications, you get an email that, again's got quite a bit of content in it. What we really want to do is simplify those cases where people first see themselves in a breach and link them through to the website that has a lot more information in it. And ideally link them through to this one. So this is a sample of the color dating data breach. Now, the thinking here would be that if you search on the front page and you find yourself in, say, color dating, there's a very short title, and it might just be like the title. I think we might have the description in there as well, and then read more, and you go through to here. Or if we send the breach notification, it'd be like, color dating data breach, and then maybe the description, read more, and you go through to here. So why are we taking people through to this page? It's a few different reasons. One of the reasons is that we can get a lot more information on here about not just what happened, but what you should do next. And we can fit that in the context of one breach much better than what we can when you see multiple breaches listed on that front page. So, in this case, and I think this is just Ingeborg, our front-end developer, mocking this up, but the compromised data is bios, email addresses, names, profile photos, dates of birth, geographic locations, and passwords. So what are the recommended actions? Well, if a password gets exposed, a recommended action is change your password. Also, enable two-factor authentication. And this is one of the points where we want to start to do stuff like say, well, do they actually support it? So if they do support it, then great, go and turn it on. If they don't support it, you can't really tell people to turn it on, can you? Because that's just confusing. So you know how people get upset when I say normies, and I keep doing it anyway? So if the normies come along and they read this and they're like, oh, I've heard about this two-factor authentication, it sounds good, let's turn it on, but the service doesn't support it, I think that's a bit misleading. So we'll be able to trim this more, and instead of saying turn it on, we might just say change your password. So we'll be able to make it more contextual. That's just a little thing. A bigger thing is an idea that the UK NCSC had when we were visiting them, where they said it would be useful if people visiting this page from the UK saw like a little NCSC logo and a link through to their guidance about how to recover from data breaches. Now, originally they said this, and I was like, well, it's basically the same. Like whether you're from the UK or Australia or Ireland or Iceland or any of the other places I have or haven't been lately, it's the same. Change your passwords, strong unique passwords, multi-factor authentication, don't give away too much data, watch your credit record, like all the usual stuff. And then as we were discussing it, one of the things that became a little bit clearer is there is something more authoritative, you know what I mean, about an official government body providing guidance that is targeted specifically at the jurisdiction the folks using the service are from. And it kind of makes sense, like if you're a normie somewhere from the UK, I'm going to keep using it. You're a normie somewhere from the UK and you come along to this website and you don't live in the tech world, and it's this weird site called Pwned, and you've just seen it on the news or a friend sent you there or something like that, and then you're seeing all this stuff. It's a little bit different to then see it's not authoritarian, authoritative? Oh, I'm jet lagged. To see the NCSC, your local government body, then giving you advice. And I actually like that idea. And this is also part of the reason why we want to try and drive people to this page. When people signed up for domain notifications or normal notifications for individual email addresses or any of these things, the only thing that we captured was an email address. So of the 5.175 million individual, got a little counter on the desk, individuals who have signed up for notifications, I don't know where they're from. And you definitely can't imply it from the email address. Like we can't just go, well, you're a .co.uk, so you're from England. Maybe you are, or the UK rather. I know they're different things, don't get upset. Also, what about all the Gmail users, who are just on like a gmail.com TLD? However, if we can get them to load the page and we get an inbound IP address, then we can make it geographically contextual and we can show the UK NCSC logo and content, and then the Irish NCSC logo and content. And then we'll have a chat to the ASD folks here and we'll do the Australian one. And we can make it much more contextual, but we need people to load that page and send an inbound IP address so we can switch context. So that's another reason why we want to give this page more exposure, which is a long way of leading us back to what I was starting on, which is the partner placement on Have I Been Pwned. Now, we have had 1Password there for many, many, many years. They sit there on the front page of Have I Been Pwned. They sit in every email we send. We do want to bring them through to here as well when there are passwords involved or when there is, really just when there's passwords involved. I was going to say when there's two-factor authentication as well, but usually the first factor is, you know what I mean. Or perhaps even when there's passkey support. But the problem is, will we ever have a data breach where the service supports passkeys and they didn't have pass? The sort of stuff that keeps me up every night. Anywho, 1Password will be relevant everywhere where authentication is involved. But what about, looking at this breach here? Let's pick another example. Let's pick an example where your name, your phone number, your date of birth, and your physical address has been exposed. Password Manager is not going to help you with the specific risks associated to those attributes. Mostly not going to help you. I can think of one or two edge cases. What's the advice that we give to people then? One of the pieces of advice that we've always given, and it's almost become a little bit of an industry in-joke as well, where there's a data breach, and what happens after a data breach happens? People get free identity protection for the next 12 months or something. And the in-joke is it's almost like a platitude of, hey, we lost your data. Oh, well, here's free identity protection. Let's talk about identity protection for a moment in terms of, at least based on my experience, what it does do, what it doesn't do, what the gaps are, and where it might be useful. And after I sort of tweeted about this partnership placement yesterday, very quickly someone was like, well, why do you need that? Because Have I Been Pwned will tell you when you're in a data breach. There are, first of all, many different services out there that do various forms of identity protection. And Very often they are specific to jurisdiction as well, for reasons that we'll come back to in a moment. And very often they bundle different things with them. So for example, they might bundle dark web searches. I have air quoted that because most of this data is not on the dark web, it's on the clear web, and some of them do use have I been pwned as a driver for that service anyway. So clearly there's not a lot of value in have I been pwned promoting a service that allows you to see if you're in data breaches. Yeah, that's just one part of it. Some of these services, of course, will bundle up a VPN, and then they'll bundle up other bits and pieces of security controls with it. But the thing that in my experience is most useful, and I've had services like this literally since the 90s, is being able to look at things like credit inquiries against your name. And that is important. I want to know if there is an application to take out a loan in my name. I want to know if there is an application to get a credit card in my name. I want to know if my name is added as the director of a company. All of these things I've gone through legitimately many times over. Have I been pwned doesn't do that. Not only does have I been pwned not do that, the way it works in Australia is very different to the way it works in the US, which is very different to the way it works in the UK. I know something that's very popular in the US is freezing your credit so that you cannot take out a loan in your name if your credit is frozen. Those are things that go well beyond just searching for yourself in data breaches, but they are things that are relevant for many people that have had their PII exposed in breaches. So there's a very long way of explaining why we're looking to find partners that we can put on this breach site, the one that explains the breach itself, who offer services in that space, because it is a relevant and useful service. Now, I would argue that many of these have a bunch of either, I don't want to say irrelevant, fluff. Let's say fluff. Many of them have a bunch of fluff around it. I think, yeah, for argument's sake, that the prevalence with which many of these services say you should be using VPNs really doesn't have a lot of impact on most of your normal day-to-day security. There are still good use cases for VPNs. For the normies doing their banking, that is not one of them. But for folks that have had the very classes of data that are used to prove identity to go and get finance, when they've had that exposed in data breach, now it's relevant. It's much, much, much more relevant. Now, as I said, this is something that differs significantly from country to country. And I know with many of the identity theft providers that I've worked with before, I had discussions with before, they might, for example, just work in the US. Or there's one, I'm not sure if we can name them, but there's one that uses have I been pwned data that is just Australia. In fact, I use this one myself. I pay a few bucks a month to the App Store to use them. And recently, as we've been doing some refinancing stuff, I've gotten alerts from that app, which is awesome. I can't do that from have I been pwned. Like, it needs to be someone that can plug into credit bureaus. Now, because they're geo-specific, again, the value of having them on a page that people go to and load means that when that IP address is sent with that inbound request, we can then trim and tailor that data. So if we partner with one for Australia that only does Australia, we'll be able to go, hey, here's Acme Core credit monitoring. That's relevant to Australia, which is the market you're coming from. That would be different to what someone else would see if they come and they load that data breach page from, say, the US. So that's our thinking. And the way we're doing this at the moment is there are a lot of different services out there that do very similar things. And we're just going to speak to a bunch of them, and we're going to see what it is they do, what we think fits best, what's not going to feel like a spammy ad, and frankly, who do we want to work with? So anyway, that was effectively the stuff that I put out on all of these social channels just before I flew. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. It's a blur. And we're now having conversations with a bunch of those folks. I'm going to be, as for anything that has anything to do with like sponsorship or advertising, I need to create documents with graphs and charts and traffic numbers and explanations and try and figure out what's the right relationship to establish with the right companies. Right. Thomas says, no sensible or serious authentication without a password manager. Yeah, it's pretty much where we are, unless you're using physical tokens as a single factor of authentication, which happens at times, or biometrics. Um, but yeah, keep in mind as well, not to go on a full like one password pitch, but password managers like one password aren't just about passwords either. Uh, I was just on the plane flying home. I have to fill in the immigration card. I need my passport number. That is securely locked away in my bag, but my phone has one password on it, and I have my passport details in there. I have all my credit card details in there, my bank details. I share things with Charlotte and with the kids as well through separate vaults that are just her and I, or the whole family, or myself and our son, or whoever it might be. It's a lot more than just passwords these days. Okay, next bit. My notes say the new UX is looking amazing. The Have I Been Pwned rebuild, which is still all being done in the open source, in the public. We have an open source repository. I'm going to drop it into the notes from this blog post. You would have seen me tweet it and share it and put it through all the social things many times over anyway. We've got a whole list of outstanding issues, which Ingeborg, our Icelandic front-end developer, is working through building out interfaces for. I'm just super, super stoked at not just how good they're looking, but the work that he is doing on these. Now, I'll give you a good example. We have some example pages here. I'll drop this in the chat. Weirdly enough, and I keep meaning to share this on social, so I'm going to do that after this this live stream. Weirdly enough, one of the things that people have liked the most about this rebuild, and I kid you not, probably the single most prominent piece of consistent feedback, was they really liked the loading icon. Now, we only had it in one place, like when you did a domain search and you're adding a domain and you get the new icon, which is effectively the stylized SQL injection, single quote, semicolon, dash, dash. And Ingeborg's just like animated parts of that. How has he even done that? Is this I think this is an SVG that's like turning colors on and off. It's kind of cool. It is an SVG. Yeah, look at that. Oh, that's so nice. Like, yeah, see? So this SVG has got different paths with different classes within it, and he's toggling the colors of the classes such that they glow. This is so nice. He's done such a good job. So anyway, I asked him the other day, I said, look, now that Stefan and I are taking all of his static website and we're building it into the real website, we've got a not open source version. We don't have, we haven't open sourced all the back end of everything on Have I Been Pwned. We are now building all of this in, and one of the things that we just recently did is actually integrated the whole front page. So in our private preview, we have a front page. So when you do a search and there's that little delay while it actually searches through however many billion records, we need the little loading icon. So Ingeborg has done this really nice examples page here with that icon. And I just love the way he's done all this, where he's given us so many good, I guess, reference implementations that make it really, really easy for us to take this stuff and then extend it to the rest of the site. So that is super cool. Something that came up today, and I'm going to put this out on the socials as well. In fact, I'm going to start a discussion on the open source UX rebuild repository, is the example that Ingeborg has given us on the front page. If I go preview.haveibeenpwned.com and I just fat finger something that matches an email address pattern and I say check, it comes back and it gives you results. And it says your email breach history. And just earlier today, Stefan said, we need a reference for when you're not in a data breach. And I kind of realized that we have lost something that was there before that is not here in the new architecture or the new design. So if I go to Have I Been Pwned live and I search for, let's say, my old email address that's been in how many data breaches now? 30 something. What we did before that didn't work, we've got a glitch related to Cloudflare turnstile not seeming to initiate properly when the front page is loaded from a local cache, which we will fix in the new one. Here we go, 33 data breaches for my old address. Now at the moment, it comes up with the great, like the screen's red and it's like, oh no, pwned. And then if I put in a different address that has not been in a data breach, it comes back and says, good news, no pwnage found, and it's green. And it's a really, really clear, oh no, red versus oh good, green. And we've kind of lost that here because first of all, we've only got a reference implementation of when data breaches are found. Second of all, it's not really like an oh no kind of thing. So we want to give it a little bit more character. And this is what I want to have the discussion about because I'd like people to chime in and give me some ideas for how to create more character. One of the things that Charlotte in particular has been raising every time we've gone and visited law enforcement agencies, and we're sort of talking about the education side of Have I Been Pwned, is we very accidentally, I think, have created a system where it's not too scary. There's no green screens or hacker hoodies or padlocks or binary flowing down the screen or like weird paradigms like that. So it's not too scary. It's pretty approachable. It's the right amount of lighthearted, I would argue. And I don't think we have that in the new design. So what I'd really like to get from people, if you listen to this later on, by the time you listen to it, we'll have this here in the discussion. If you're listening to it now, I'm going to do this as soon as I drop off the call, whatever it is. I want to put this discussion idea in there and figure out how do we bring that character back in. It doesn't have to be exactly the same as before, but give it some life and some interest and some levity. Maybe that's the right word for it. We're still targeting the 17th of May to make all of this live. So that's really, by my clock, that's 3 weeks. 5 weeks. Whoa, 5 weeks. So 5 weeks from today, we want to be making this live. So we are working against the clock. And there's a number of reasons why that's just the best possible time for us to do it based on schedules and things like that. So this is like pivotal because it is like the heart of the system, coming back and showing you if you've been in data breaches or not. So I'd really like ideas from folks. I'm going to put that up there in the discussion list very soon. I'll raise an issue out of it as well. We'll put it on Ingeberg's list, but we just got to get a little bit more meat into what should it look like and how should it feel. All right, folks, I think I'm going to cap it there. This has been a 32-minute update. That's about half normal, which I'm quite okay with given the circumstances of all the travel and everything else. So let me drop there. When I come home, I will do this from home next time. I don't really want to have to take all this tripod and stuff like that away with me. But based on that schedule, I think we are going to be doing it 9 days from now. So it's actually going to push through into the start of the following week. But that is okay. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this one. And I'll see you from back home, assuming I don't get eaten by a whale shark, when I'm over in Exmouth next week. Fingers crossed. Thanks, folks.